welcome to my podcast, Tea with Marie. I've decided to call this podcast because it's exactly that. I want you to kick back, relax, go grab a cuppa. If you don't have one in hand, press pause, go and put the kettle on. But it's got that feeling to it, isn't it? Like tea with Marie. Just chilling, just chatting, as if we were sat opposite right now, just having a cup of coffee, chewing the cud, as we say in the UK, which means having a good old chat. So, there's much like my videos, I'm always going to deep dive into powerful subjects, which we all are, wanting to make sense of. The videos are usually power packed. We kind of get stuck in straight away, but with these podcasts, I really wanted to kind of, make it, bring a different energy to it, thoughts to ponder, things to think about, giving more of a relaxed space to actually put your earphones in, press play, cook dinner, drive, whatever. And I feel that these kind of podcasts are the ones I love listening to anyway, because it's just, I think when you're more relaxed, more things go in. And let's face it, let's keep it super real. We are in an era now where we are all experiencing screen fatigue. And, anything longer than 10, 15, 20 minutes on a screen now is too much. Even though I'd love you all to watch my videos all day long. But even me, I get screen fatigue. And sometimes I just want to put my earphones in, go and walk the dogs and just, have interact that way. So this is where I just thought this would be a beautiful way to kind of kick back and relax, have some tea with Marie. Like I say, right now I'm chilling out in my dining room. It's Sunday afternoon. Everybody's out the house. This house is usually like a hippo trail. For those that know Africa, a hippo trail is quite busy because that means that the hippos are running into the river, out of the river onto land, in and out, in and out, in and out. Bit of an African saying, that is a hippo trail, but that's what my house is usually like. And it's quiet today. It's quiet, but it's a very, very hot summer's day. If you hear any weird panting in the background, it's my dog Anubis, who's a big black German shepherd, who's just not a fan of the summer, man. So he's lying at my feet here now, just panting furiously. So yeah, shame. Can we send some cool vibes to Anubis, please, So this podcast is something I've been wanting to just talk about at length because it affects everybody. And this podcast is all about addiction. Now, addiction, back in the day, if you said about addiction, straight away you'd think about somebody having a needle hanging out their arm or addicted to pills and potions or alcoholism. It was the real kind of what I call lick and stick kind of version of addiction. But I've always said, for years that everybody's an addict. I think it's part of the human experience, right? The varying degrees on how much of an addict you are, well, that kind of it can be deeply subconscious. It can be very, very much in your consciousness. There's lots of different versions of it, isn't there? So, if you think about it, we're as humans, we're just attached to everything, It's for example, mildly going, this is a mild addiction. So you go and have a couple of beers at the end of the day because you've had a hard day at work, and that's your savior. Do you know what I mean? It's even me, I don't drink alcohol that much. I do an odd gin and tonic, but it's for me, my guilty pleasure is to have black coffee in the morning, a big one. I only have one a day, but that's my ritual, and I can't not have that. So in a way, that's an addiction as well. I don't really think I'm addicted to the coffee. I think I'm addicted to the ritual of emotionally how I would feel if that's not in place. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I refer to as mild addiction. Those couple of beers you have after work. If I suggested to you not to have them, it could bring up some kind of emotional, reaction within. And then, of course, let's just talk about it. The screen fatigue. As I say, it's we're on these computers, on these phones all the time. Yet there's something called doom scrolling, which, I feel it when I'm actually on my device, where I'm looking at TikTok or whatever, and I can feel it shift. And then all of a sudden, I've gone from laughing at fluffy cats, and then all of a sudden I'm in it, man, and I can't put my phone down, and some of these things are very, very much orchestrated by Team Dark, I think, to kind of suck our energy out of us. And, but then also as well, it is the human experience to have that addict nature. So, really, when we think about it, what exactly is addiction, or what purpose does it serve? Okay, like it probably escapism. Any addiction is self-soothing. It's to numb a pain inside, because addiction is, and I've suffered with addiction all my life, FYI. I'm going to get into my story in a short minute. But addiction is like a big gaping hole in your inside. Okay, think of it like that. And that gaping hole, should be filled with love, should be filled with positivity and all the good things, right? But we're having a human experience. So, it's not always the way, is it? So to kind of like fill that hole, we fill it with things which are probably momentarily pleasurable, like a couple of mollies in the nightclub, or you know what I mean, or we go out and have like obscene amounts of cake and coffee because we're binge eating, because for a moment that made us feel better, and then not for long though, because then we feel stupidly or ridiculously guilty. But these things, it's a numbing factor, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like shopping. I was addicted to shopping at one point just to fill a void with something, but it's always short-lived. It's like I was a drug addict for my younger years, and I'm going to speak about that now, which is where I started. I think I was about, when did I start? Probably about 12 years old. I probably started smoking cigarettes, right? And it's just the thing that we all do. Do you know what I mean, as youngsters? But like I was a bit of a rebel. I think a lot of us were. And I started smoking cigarettes when I was about 12. And then by 14, I was smoking marijuana and weed and things like that. And then by about 15, I was on to, what we call speed, which is like amphetamines. And then, of course, in my day, it was called ecstasy. They call it Molly now. And I was definitely fully invested in the rave scene. You know what I mean? I was all about that. I was just like on self-destruct. When people were leaving school at the age of 16, they were all like choosing their careers for like, to be a vet or something like that. I remember it clear as day, where I was like, okay, I had such a preconception because the rave scene was really kicking off then. You know what I mean? It was like the 90s. And I was like, no, I'm going to go and party like there's no tomorrow. I'm going to the illegal raves. That's what I'm doing. And that was my vision and mission, right? So it was preconceived that I was going to go and, get stuck in when I left school. So, the wild child syndrome was already there, or the self-destruct syndrome rather, And, I didn't know myself to be a sensitive kid then. I knew that most of my childhood I was lonely, which is ridiculous because I come from a really, really big family, which are from Wolverhampton and Birmingham and places like that in the UK. And you usually find that big city families, you know what I mean? Or big cities have big city families, right? And I mean, my memories growing up were wonderful, loads of cousins, loads of aunties and uncles, all hanging out, nans and granddads around. It was great. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't, I didn't have a traumatic childhood like that, but I was super lonely and I didn't know why. And I always felt on the outside looking in. I have that awareness now I'm an adult, but at the time I just remember the loneliness, right? So anyway, flash forward, that's probably what spurred the Starseed mission on, just to self-destruct. So by the time I got to like 17, at 17, I had my first nervous breakdown. And, I got in with the wrong crowd and everything like that. And I was just trying to fit in. And I think when you go into the rave scene and drugs and things like that, you kind of find other broken springs like you all coming from the same place. And you find like a kind of like dysfunctional family friendship, a place where you belong, because your matched vibration is your brokenness. And there was a relation to that. I suppose, it's, what do they call it? When you connect through trauma. Do you know what I mean? It's trauma bonding, I didn't know it to be that at the time, but we all kind of fit in with each other. So anyway, usual story, Marie was the last one always to leave the party. I couldn't just go on a one-night bender. I'd be on it for 4 or 5 days. Do you know what I mean? I did not want the sun to come up. I remember that all the time. Didn't want the sun to come up. And there was just like, just escapism, as I say. So it got very, very dark. For very good reason in my younger years. And I had my first nervous breakdown because of all of this when I was 17. And then I had another one when I was 21, then 30. Yeah, so that's 3 nervous breakdowns. I do everything in threes. It's hysterical. Even my breakdowns come in threes. But when I say breakdowns, I'm talking panic attacks in public, so severe that I had to go and lie down for 2 days. I'm talking all of my hair fell out, like I'm talking deathly thin. I couldn't function. I could not function. And here I was, this young person who was just, I don't know, so lost. And, you know, within that life, you just obviously vibrating at your lowest of low. And of course, that's when all the other horrible experiences come in, you know, violent boyfriends, abuse on every single level. It was just a whole big dark night of the soul. So, you know, that was my entry into it all, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? Like, I suppose that was my entry into the first dark night of the soul. And I didn't know it to be so at the time. So anyway, just kind of like came out of that or escaped the first, like kind of came out the first nervous breakdown and gathered my soul parts, only to kind of like jump into the second one. And it just kept rolling, you know? But anyway, when I got to about 22 years old, 23 years old, this is where the story turns, right? I got a invitation to go to Zimbabwe, and I went with friends, and, you know, my mom and dad were just like, shame, they didn't know what to do with me, you know, just had this child that was really kind of like messed up, and they were like, you know, you've had an invite to go to Zimbabwe, change the trajectory, do you know what I mean? Like, you know, try and change the narrative. So they lent me the money to go to Zimbabwe, and of course I did. And we were staying with some friends on a tobacco farm, some older people, some elderly people, and the son was sent to the airport to pick us up. So the son picked us up, and then 5 days later, the son asked me to marry him, and that was my husband, and that's who I'm still with today. So that's when my life took a serious turn in a different direction. So of course, I had a 2-week holiday, it turned into 4 weeks, and I mean, like, there's a lot more that went on during this time, but my husband-to-be at the time said, listen, you can come, but your addiction can't. I think you need to go home and actually just, you know, figure it out. So I basically did, and he followed me just a few days later, fought with my father to ask for my hand in marriage, because I'm the youngest of 3 daughters. So of course my father was like, absolutely not. She's bonkers. She's had so much going on in her life. She's not emotionally stable, and you think you're going to marry my daughter? Hell to the no. But anyway, Brendan, my husband, fought for my honor. And eventually my dad said, okay, she can go, expecting me to, because I was a hot mess, expecting me to come back. But bless my parents, they were like, well, we gotta just see what happens here. It's got to be better than what she was doing. So anyway, they expected me to come back, and I didn't. I spent probably the first month absolutely terrified in Zimbabwe when I landed, and I then realized, oh my God, I've just said yes to marry some guy I don't even know after 5 days of knowing him. Got really scared. And then I wanted to get my Nikes on and run. This is very twin flamey, by the way, and that's what me and my husband actually are. It's like not an easy relationship. So anyway, wanted to get my Nikes on or my Reeboks and run like a rat up a drain pipe. And yeah, I basically got scared. So I was about to leave, and just as I was about to leave, I found out I was pregnant with my son Bevan. And my son Bevan, now 23 years old, strapping young lad, was the anchor that kind of like said, no, you got to face your shit. And my husband was like, you know, didn't make me stay. He says, it's your decision. What a difficult decision. I had to face my stuff or get eaten up by addiction. That was the decision. That was the turning point in my life. And bearing in mind, I was a baby. I was only 23, and I had to make a decision, not being of sound mind, because I was still coming off drugs. So of course I spent that whole pregnancy coming off some serious drugs and being pregnant, and actually just living in the middle of Zimbabwe where there was farm invasions going off left, right and center, married to a man I don't know, baby in my belly. 5 minutes ago I was in the rave scene, I was in the club. Now all of a sudden I'm in the deepest, darkest Africa, fighting off like a tribe war. Do you know what I mean? With addiction drying out, with, you know, with a pregnancy, you know. So that's how hectic life can grab hold of you. If we want to talk about purpose, that's how purpose can actually just go. Like, this is what I say to everybody now, knowing a little bit of my backstory. You know, when people worry about, like, when I speak to millions of people all over the world, like, you know, when they worry about, like, am I going to make it? What if this doesn't happen? And I always think of this story, and I bring this story up with some, that, like, you know, how is that for an intervention, right? How on God's green earth, when there weren't even cell phones in those days, how did I get to meet my husband? How did that happen? 5 days after knowing each other, asking me to marry him. And I said yes. And then I was going to leave and run, and then a baby comes along. I mean, like, that's an intervention. So when spirit needs you to stay somewhere and do something, then that's what's going to happen. So it doesn't matter. If you've written it in the stars, you can't miss opportunities. Some people will say that you can. You can't. Because basically everything is written in the stars. It's agreed upon before you come. Now, there is an element that you might take a wrong turning. You are a creature of free will. There is a possibility you could completely change your mind and have to come back and repeat your life. But the thing is, this incarnation is all about clearing all your karma in this lifetime. We never used to be able to do that. We used to have to drop the body and come back again because the world was so dense, and we were backed up with shadow spirit lives that we had to clean. But this lifetime now, we have like the opportunity to clear karma and ascend in the body. Ascend to descend, because ascend gives you the feeling that you're going to go up, but it's actually not. To ascend, it means you're coming into the full embodiment of you as a starseed incarnate in this physical body. So we can't get it wrong. We can't get it wrong. You might miss the bus, but there'll be another bus number 2 behind it. Do you know what I mean? So spirit will always bring it back around and bring it back around until you get the memo. But I think, look, this particular lifetime, I don't think you can take a wrong turn. I don't think you can miss anything, because it's just not where we're at. You know what I mean? This is like karma tipping the scales. We're onto the new Earth timeline now. You know what I mean? So in a very, very short way, that was my chat on addiction. So, of course, when I moved to Zimbabwe, obviously pregnant and everything like that, had my son. And then out of boredom, I went and did a fitness course because I was just so bored. Like just sitting in Zim, just like, what do I do with my life? Ended up by accident doing this course, this fitness course. Turns out I turned out to be an absolute group fitness instructor teacher, absolute extraordinaire. Who would have thought it? And I became one of the top trainers in Zim. And I ended up being in the gyms for 8 years, and then I just got really good at this stuff. I was an exercise specialist for 20 years, and I studied all the way up the realms, with that, personal training, all the rest of it. So here I was being lulled into a false sense of security that I'm cured. This is amazing. I don't do drugs anymore. I've got a husband and a baby. Everything has changed. I am good. This is great. No, it's not. Because guess what? I've only talked my way up to 2 nervous breakdowns. There was a third one that came in Zimbabwe, and I'll tell you why. Because this is where I wasn't spiritual at this time. This is where I started to understand, okay, so addiction is just pills and powder and schnoffing cocaine and things like that. Oh no, honey, how wrong can you be? All of a sudden, I became really addicted to exercise, right? I'm talking training 4 to 6 hours a day on a normal day. And then I decided to open up a food, like a healthy eating, nutritional weight loss franchise. I did really well with it. But then I became addicted to food. Then I became addicted to shopping. And then I started to get the memo where I was like, hang on a minute. I think this addiction thing may be not about the substance and maybe more about the energy of it. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of really, really started to wake up to the fact that I had to slam my foot on this addiction energy's head, because it was moving all the way through my life like a cancer. But I naively thought that it was just, if you were an addict, it was just through alcohol or drugs. It wasn't at all. So that's where it all began for me. And, basically, that was a big part of my journey to understand that addiction is an archetype as well. So this is where everybody gets it wrong, and probably many will fiercely disagree with me, but I've walked the path, and this is the gospel of Marie. Take what resonates, leave the rest behind. But I believe that addiction is an archetype. You cannot clear the addict out of the being because it's part of you. There's certain things you can because they're just layers, you know what I mean? But the addict, it is about gaining mastery over the human experience. This is why we're here. And addiction is one of them. So I present to you this, okay? And I'm going to say it like it is. So if my addict got bored and I wasn't dealing with my shadow, and I wasn't doing the healing work and the self-healing and all that kind of stuff, do you know what I mean? My addict gets up to naughtiness, meaning cocaine, pills, addictions, deluxe, right? But if I gave her mandalas to color, then she's a winner. My addict, right? She gets jobs done. It gives me the opportunity to get a project up in no time at all. I'm going to talk about ADHD in this as well, because this is kind of like borderline to this. But your addict can work very well for you, meaning you are going to create, achieve, and complete, right? Like no other. However, you have to keep an eye on her or him because it can get out of control, because you can go from creative to crackhead in 0.5 seconds. And before I didn't even notice the shift. Now I can feel it straight away. And when I feel it, some days it kicks in after 3 hours. Some days I can be working all day and I can do a good 8 hours and then it kicks in. Some days I can go for 2 days and I'm good. It all depends, but I have to keep an eye on her and be very, very aware of my energy as to where I am overly focused. And I've now clicked over to the crackhead department. Do you know what I mean? Where I literally can't come away, and it's like, it gets obsessive, right? So that is what mastery over your emotions is all about. And this is where the Hermetic principles comes in, because all of these things that have been thrown at us are superpowers. But if you leave them unvetted or you don't consciously work with them, they can become prisons, right? Not superpowers, prisons, and they can take you down hardcore. But that is what we have come to learn on how to master this. So without it, what are we doing? Absolutely nothing. Do you know what I mean? So I believe an addict nature is absolutely a superpower and should be embraced as such, right? So let's just talk about that. I'm going to rewind a bit because I'm going to get into the ADHD aspect. Again, I've experienced that. So yeah, I've got a whole thing to share with you here. So the Starseed mission, all right, I believe, many wouldn't, because they say there's lots of different versions of us, but I think we're all Starseeds, to be honest. I really, really do. I believe that we are all from the stars, but I'm very, very deeply kind of like, my default is Egypt, and if I have an Egyptian DNA, as it were, which truly I do, I believe that the same as them, that we all come from the stars. Every single temple in Egypt, if you look up, they've got the 5-pointed stars: 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. As above, so below. We are a reflection of the divine, right? And I believe that we're all star seeds. But you know what? It matters not, because we're all one. This is just tea with Marie. You know what I mean? Just going with it. So, in light of the fact that we're all starseeds, and, we've come here on a mission, right? Gaia is a planet of learning, right? It's a planet of learning. Very, very soon, once we complete and we come into this new Earth timeline, it has been the councils, the galactic councils, will now start calling this planet the planet of manifestation. No one, no thing, anywhere in the multiverse can you manifest as effectively and as efficiently and as quickly as you can in the energy of Gaia. But before we get there, the whole planet is known as the place of learning. It is known as the hardest planet to live on as well, because of the human emotions aspect, right? Everything is an experiment. Gaia is in a galactic experiment. They wanted to see what it would be, what we would act like with human emotions. And also as well, this is the thing. Emotions / addictions, whatever, we are so controllable. The human mind is so easy to manipulate and control. And that is why we've had so many problems with dodgy aliens, because they use mind control over us all the time. Even the news, even all of that is basically dropping in mind control. Do you know that there are actually starseeds, dodgy starseed aliens, whatever, that were kicked off this planet many eons ago because they didn't play by the rules, but still from distance they mind control us. And that is what the whole purpose is of being here right now, is to break that slave consciousness, right? So if you want to talk about slavery, that isn't even a racial thing. That's a this thing. You know what I mean? We have been slaves for God knows how long. Every single we've been a pawn in everybody's game, whether it's like, even back in the day, the governments, which would be like, I don't know, the puppet pharaohs, I suppose, in Egypt, the religious sectors, and obviously the aliens, you know what I mean? And all that kind of stuff. I mean, I know I'm going out there a little bit here, but we've always been the little minions that have been controlled, So what happened way back when? Because Atlantis happened many, many different timelines, okay? So Atlantis wasn't just one place. There were many places that were deemed as Atlantis at different timelines. And each time they collapsed, because when we were given our freedom, all of a sudden our mentality is to control one another, if not ourselves. This is going back to the addiction. So, so this is why we keep falling flat on our faces, because this time round, our mission as starseeds is to think for ourselves, is to actually come into your own inner voice, your own truth, empower yourself by knowing that you are an extension of all of the consciousness that there is. You're an extension of that. You were created in Mother, Father, God's eye. You know, we are a manifestation of their vision. So, and we're in that. We're all part of that. You know what I mean? I don't know whether you can hear that bird in the background. There we go. That's an ibis. Is he? Yeah, I hope you can hear that. That's an ibis. That's actually known as Toth. So I'm just telling you, Toth is here hanging out. So we have an Anubis, the black dog on the floor, and we have an ibis. And yeah, so it's all happening, guys. It's all happening. Like I say, tea with Marie. But anyway, going back to the aspects of the humanness, you know what I mean? It's all about control. You know what I mean? Control over or control under. So basically, this takes us back to the addiction again. Right? Because, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like being addicted to something is such a mind thing, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So we need to gain mastery over our minds, fill the gaping hole inside, get rid of all the pain and suffering, which we're actually doing, and fill it with the joy and the love and the truth of who we really are. More consciousness needs to go in there, more love. And that will only happen as we move into this new timeline. That's the fullness of you. That's what we're talking about, being whole, right? So if you're whole, then there's no shadow, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and if there's no shadow, there's no hooks for addiction. And if there's no hooks for addiction, there is no slavery. Do you know what I mean? No one can manipulate you, and you can't manipulate anybody else. And you can't manipulate yourself. Do you know what I mean? Or sabotage yourself. So as a starseed coming to Gaia, because we're all about learning on this planet, right? Basically, we were meant to break into a million pieces. Addiction is very, very common, if not every starseed goes through it. And you're supposed to. I was supposed to go through it. I was supposed to have 1, 2, 3 breakdowns so I could smash myself into a million pieces. And here's the thing, our humanness goes, oh yeah, I came here for a mission and I need to get X, Y, and Z done. But oh my God, I've been through so much, and I've been through so much trauma, and this kind of breakdown thing got in the way, but I need to get back to my mission. That was the mission. Do you not realize that you had absolute success in breaking yourself into a million pieces? That was what was ordained. It was agreed upon with the Starseed Council before we came here. You know, we didn't just come here blindly. We agreed and signed off on everything. And that who was going to be in our movie, who was going to come in and take us out, what was going to go on and how, right? We didn't come here blind. We didn't come here with nothing. They gave us the Hermetic principles, the laws, you know what I mean? The gods and goddesses, our channel to be able to hear and see and all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? So it was meant that we were supposed to break into a million pieces, right? And for good reason, because we are here to rebuild humanity. We are here to rebuild like the broken parts of the consciousness, right? And we are part of that. You know what I mean? We need to heal that now. And the way that we change that is by healing within ourselves, right? And that's why many of us suffer with addiction, right? So as I said, the addict is an archetype. It's not something you can heal or get rid of. And funny story, I remember being sat on an animal communication course actually. And two stories actually, just to back this up. Anyway, we're all sat there chilling at the end, and there was a whole room of people, and we were talking about addicts. And I basically said, oh, no, you can't heal your addict. You've got to work with them. Do you know what I mean? You know, I work with my addict all the time. Well, the whole room went up in uproar. What are you talking about? I attend an AA meeting every week. I'm an alcoholic. You're talking absolute shit. This other person stood up and got really upset with me. And I was like, oh my God. But my point was, I said, in light of all of your reactions to addiction, it's because you've not healed. That's why you're kind of getting quite upset with me. I've done my work where I've really understood, and I still continue now to really deep dive into the addiction side of things with myself and understand the frenzy that I can go into, because again, that's about mastering the human experience. I will never stop using that archetype to teach me about me and other people, right? But these people got very, very upset with me. And there was a big reaction to it. And the reaction was fear and their pain. Their pain spoke. And I remember thinking, whoa, okay, so there's a different understanding here. So if you're still in it, then you're going to disagree with it wholeheartedly. But when you gain power and mastery over shadow and you unlock it, then it becomes peaceful, right? As we know, anything that is obviously an overreaction to something, even in my life, if I'm overly reacting to a certain situation that's played out, that is a spiritual issue. If somebody pisses you off and you get a little bit angry, it's warranted and balanced and matches the energy of the situation that's gone down. That's just life. But if you overreact and it cuts too deep, there's energy there and there's something spiritual or something energetic you need to look at. I don't like using the word spiritual. It's got lost. But like, there's something energetically you need to look at, right? So there was also another story where I remember talking to a lady that used to live on the streets. And, and she actually told me that I couldn't have been an addict. And that I was talking nonsense and, was I really an addict though? And we had this big debate and I was just like, why do you think that I wasn't an addict with the stories that I tell you? Do you know what I mean? She was like, well, you're healed. Like no addict that I know is like, you know what I mean? Like free from that. And I was like, well, that's the point, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? They don't believe, or people don't believe that they can be freed from this sickness because it is a sickness. And all it's requiring you to do is to take power over it, right? Anything in your life that is basically disempowering you is calling you. If it's in your face and it's zinging you, it's saying, hey, over here, come here, even though you don't want to, come here. I'm untapped power. I'm untapped, fear is untapped power. And let's face it, everything leads to fear, right? Because it's just, a natural thing, but it's the biggest map and compass. And I have faced so many things in my life and people do deem me as fearless. But let me tell you, I shit myself with everything I look at. And I've been a big scaredy cat all my life. But the difference is fear will not stop me from going there. I'll go and do it anyway. I will. Do you know what I mean? And I think I've spent my whole life being uncomfortable because of the initiations that I've had to walk, because one day I need to just turn around and say, no, I'm not doing that. Do you know what I mean? But I never do. I'm like, okay, we're doing it. Do you know what I mean? So it really is our distortion and the shadow and the shade in our lives needs to be looked at as a pure gift. But the initiation is having the courage to go and step into it. And then Jesus must take the wheel, right? So now I'm just like, how's this? Like, I'm sat here on a Sunday afternoon doing a lekker. Lekker is means nice in South Africa. A lekker podcast with you guys. And I'm surrounded by animals because I'm not in my office. I have to remove a big Maine Coon off my pad because I'm sat here going through a list of very important subject matters here. So we now have Freya, who's sat on my pad, and she hisses a lot and scratches. So if there's a big bun fight going on this side, you know that she scratched me. Anyway, it's okay. She's moved. So now let's talk about ADHD. Oh, child, I have got a story of note to share with you about ADHD. So this all ties into the addiction thing. All right. Now I'm going to give you a story. And this story only kind of flared up in the past 3 months. I'm recording this December 2024. Okay. So October 2024, which was only 3 months ago, I think we've all felt this year of transformation. It wasn't pretty. I remember going through a massive flare-up through perimenopause and ADHD. Now, my daughter's ADHD, but not diagnosed by the doctors, never felt the need to put her on medication. For me personally, I don't feel that that's the way to go. So she works with microdosing mushrooms, which is incredible for anybody out there who has ADHD. It is so good for that. And it's been a life changer for her. And I've also used them as well. So basically I go, alternative routes to calm the mind, as it were. But anyway, I went through this big flare up, perimenopause and ADHD. Now, both of those symptoms, women out there, they're the same. They're the same. And then what happened is there was a huge influx of energy on the planet at that same time in October. I got hit twice, perimenopause, ADHD. And then I felt like I was going through a psychosis because then I started to really hear spirit talking to me to the point I was like in a loud dinner hall. I was so overwhelmed. And I was like, I really thought that I was ready for the funny farm. I needed to be boxed up and taken to some kind of secure unit. Me and my husband walked the dogs together and he just dragged me along by my hoodie going, come on, you need to ground. And I was snotting tears behind him just going, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going mad. It really was really intense. So anyway, in all of the intensity of all of this, I actually phoned every single person I could get my hands on to find out where I could get tested for ADHD so I could unpack it like I did my addiction, to work with it rather than against it, because I knew that it was causing me harm now. So anyway, one person phoned me back, only one person. And I said to her, I need to be tested for ADHD. Her response was like, well, hang on a minute. Let's just talk about why you think you're ADHD. So this conversation went down on the 88 portal, Lionsgate, just so you know. So I was already like my lion ears already pricked up at this conversation. And she says to me, well, how safe do you feel inside? And I was like, I am fearful all the time. I'm not very safe inside at all. And she was like, and she said, do you tend to work and go into a frenzy and then hit a brick wall, get really, really tired into burnout, and then go into depression, rinse and repeat? And I was like, yes, I do. Because that's what was happening with the Egypt tours and everything like that. I was working for 12 hours a day behind my computer. I'm a one-man band. I've had no support putting these together, even though all I wanted was support. Absolutely terrified and fearful of my mission. I've spoken a lot about this on my videos, and you know how much power it takes to step into your purpose and face your shit. And let me tell you, it's been, my whole life I've had this kind of intense fear. It doesn't matter what I do. So of course along comes a big mission like creating massive portals in Egypt and doing this on my own, and it just exacerbated, I mean, you can imagine it's a big thing to hold, but it just made everything 10 times worse. And I literally wanted to leave the planet. I was like, I'm done. I need to leave. I can't do this anymore. So anyway, she said, why don't we have a couple of psychotherapy sessions? Now let me tell you, my whole life changed after that, because psychotherapy, I was like, no, I don't do counselors. I'm a spiritual starseed. I'm not doing any of that. Thank you very much. But there was control again, because if I'd gone and healed this with another healer, I would have been in the mix completely. I'll be like, right, they're tapping into my mental body now. Okay, I know what they're doing there. I can feel the energy there. And I would be in it the whole way, because I am a healer and a teacher and all the rest of it. Very familiar with that. So she said, let's do some sessions. Well, blow me down. We sat and we talked, and she broke down this whole ADHD thing, which really stemmed from my addiction. Like, you know, like then I understood my younger years. I was like, oh, I mean, let's face it, every starseed suffers intensely with a lack of safety, right? I think it's kind of part of our flames up our asses, which we came with to make us unpack our shadow. Every single starseed I know has fear, right? Show me like extreme fear, right? And we're also very sensitive as well, right? So all of the things, okay? So anyway, we sat and we basically started to unpack the fact that I didn't feel safe inside. So what I was actually doing, okay, I created a program so that I could feel safe. And that was doing, because it wasn't available to me to come into my inner world and be completely present. I could be present, but not 100% downloaded. And it wouldn't be enough that I could maintain that presence. And then I would bounce out, and then I'd go into a doing frenzy. And that's what would happen. 12 hours, videos, creating and all this kind of thing. And then I would go from creative to crackhead, like I explained it. And then I would be going into that doom energy of like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. So that's kind of like the energy that I was in. So I would get so tired with that I would burn out, which is classic ADHD, 10 tabs open, you know what I mean? Like anxiety attacks in the middle of the night, and just keep repeating the same cycle. So I then started to realize just how unsafe I felt inside. Then I started to realize just how traumatized my inner child is, or was, rather, because I've really shifted it now. And I have done so much inner child work, but I never addressed her from a psychotherapy standpoint, meaning somebody that wasn't talking spirit to me, somebody that was just saying, hey, the party's in the body, hey? And life can't be amazing all day, every day. You know what I mean? Even extreme bliss is an imbalance. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and then acceptance is grounding. That's another thing that I was taught. Instead of putting your roots into your earth and all that kind of thing, she said to me, do you realize acceptance of just how things are helps you ground into everything? And I was like, blow me down. It does. And that is like the stem of addiction, fear. The fear then creates the gaping hole because it's uncleared, it's undealt with trauma. Then we look around and go, well, we can't go inside because there's all that unsafeness there. It's horrible. So what else are we going to do? Let me grab for a bottle of vodka. Let me go and eat that cake because it will give me a momentary just like, I mean, that's what binge eating is, isn't it? Eat loads of food, then you vomit, and then there's almost like a release, like a even people that self-harm. That's what it's all about on a very, very deep-seated level. It's untapped power, but it's undealt with trauma. You know what I mean? And that is what addiction is. Okay, so understanding ADHD and how it connects with that. Look, I do understand that there's some severe ADHD people out there, and to function, they need the medication. And I am so for that. You know, that's down to you, and you know what's good for you and all the rest of it. Do you know what I mean? But in my world, you know, this is what was good for me. But like now I'm like, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. I really, really do get it. Now, what I want to chuck into here, which is so interesting, okay, because now let me just rewind a little bit. Now with addiction, I am so acutely aware of when I'm in creative mode and that click over into crackhead. I am so acutely aware of where I'm coming, like, you know, from flow and then into frenzy, right? I'm so acutely aware that when I'm in an ebb and flow, or I've tapped into an extreme high and low. And that is the Hermetic principles. That is the mastery of a human experience. That is understanding addiction. That is understanding the where's, the why's, the how's, because we are having a human experience. So this is all part of it. So embrace it. Like, embrace it. Don't run away from it, because the humanness is the actual place that you need to go to be able to open the door to all of the magic and joy and everything like that, because joy comes with walking with friends, or in the woods, or kind of like having a very balanced experience with a cake, basically, and a cup of tea. Doesn't, you know, you can go out for a bottle of wine, don't have 10. Do you know what I mean? You can go out and I don't know, just like, you know, go to a festival and just maybe just do a little bit of mushrooms and just enjoy yourself. You don't have to go out and do 20 bags of cocaine just to basically escape for the weekend. Do you know what I'm saying? So this is all about balance, you know, and it's all real simple. It's about addressing the inner child, right? And that's where the addiction comes from. It's a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. But when we start to, like, you know, power over and claim these dysfunctions now come into functions. Now, let me tell you, since I have gone on this road in the last few months of really having all these alternative things available to me, even my psychotherapist, I don't have problems. That's not why I'm going. I go there because it's receiving. For me, it's a place I go once a week just to talk about normal human stuff. And that human chit chat with a little bit of spirit in there, because she's a little bit spiritual, my lady I go to, it is wonderful. Will I go there forever? Probably not. But right now, this is about me slowing everything down, giving everything to me, because this is my place, because it helps so many people in the world. This is my place. This is my place I go. You know, like that massage place that you go to, you just love it. It's that hour for you. That's the place. That tree you go and sit up against and you switch your phone off and it's your hour. That's for you. This is what this is for me. It's an absolute honey nectar. And, you know, for now, it's working wonders. But as I go through this transition from the old timeline into the new one, it grounds me in. So we have our own versions of that. What represents to you the humanness? Sometimes, you know, the most grounding thing that can get me out of my head in this addictive energy and frenzy? I go and have a pint in the pub and I just sit with people. Or I go to the mall. That's the most grounding, being of the world thing I can do. And for some, it's the worst nightmare. But for me, that's my mastering my human experience. So it doesn't all have to be so complex and meditations and reading books. It can just be take yourself to a football game. Go and put a bobble hat on and go and, like, you know, drink a pint of beer and watch soccer. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. Be of the world, but don't be too much of it. Find the balance, right? So all of this is about that, basically. So now I just want to finish on something else, which is super interesting, like super interesting. So I had so many realizations, as we all have, and this is all to do with addiction. So work with me here. So I am a rhesus negative O blood type. I have a very, very red blood group. Now, O's, like, basically are the original blood type of the whole world. That's what we were before we became farmers and things like that. So how it kind of like works is a O blood type is either a hunter or a gatherer. Okay. My son's an O blood type and my daughter, and he's really tall and like very, very lean. Whereas me and my daughter, we're a bit more athletic and, we struggle with our weight a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And we kind of like, we struggle with inflammation and things like that. So my son's the opposite, but he's still an O. So he's actually the hunter. Okay. And me and my daughter are the gatherer personality type, which means the gatherer personality type, we have high adrenaline in our body. So HIIT training is amazing for us. Do you know what I mean? Whereas my son, Bevan, he loves long endurance training because it's great for him. Because if he was the hunter back in the caveman days, he'd be the one that's basically chasing the dinosaurs or whatever, and he would need that kind of like endurance. Whereas the gatherer, we kind of like keeping hoarding the food because we don't know when we're going to get fed next. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, the hunter and the gatherer works well together. But being the gatherer, that makes us prone to inflammation. And guess what? Addiction. Addiction is really, really rife in an O blood type, right? Because of the high energy, because of the adrenaline. If it's not managed and it doesn't have anywhere to go, that's where addiction comes in, because we're trying to control what's going on inside of us. So if you're an O blood type, you're going to be prone to this. O blood types are prone to breakdowns. O blood types are prone to ADHD. Who would have thunk it, hey? So all of these things we find out about ourselves on a physiological level, it's incredible. And guess what? The O blood types as well have a very, very a long, deep connection to all of the Atlantis and the ancient energies and things like that, because we were the original blood types coming here. So what happened when we were like nomads and everything like that, running from dinosaurs and being on, that's where the fight or flight comes from, by the way. That's very addiction stuff. Fight, flight, fawn. Okay, so remember, your fawn is your people pleasing. That's like probably all of us. But fight or flight, you never know when you've got to get out the room or whatever. You've got to be on high alert. Now, I've been like that my whole life, and that's why I use drugs to soothe that, to numb that fear all the time. So now I've understood all of this, I can better manage myself. So again, this is all examples of mastering your human experience. It doesn't just come through hermetic principles and laws and things like that. It can come through finding out what blood type you are and everything like that, and supporting yourself in that way. So I think that really this whole podcast today is all about embracing the human experience, being accepting and loving of what you've been through and what you're going through, because there's always a good reason for it, Addiction and anything like that, which is deemed unacceptable or wrong or bad or unforgivable, that's bullshit, because basically it's just a shadow waiting to be tapped for its power that it wishes to give to you. Every distortion, shadow experience, there is a gift. This is your movie. You're a creator, a master creator. You created all of this around you. So you would have put addiction in your path for very good reason. Find out what the reason is, and it's just like, it's all good. It's all good. But first things first, I think to take any step towards your addiction is you've got to address the inner child. You have to start there, because it's a bit like having a shitty home life. You don't want to go home, so you just keep taking constant shifts at the cafe, because you just want to work all the time, because you don't want to go home. But your body is your home, so you need to figure out as to what's in the way that's preventing you coming home. Once you can come home, you will then start to feel a much better sense of safety. And do you know, since I've done this, my inflammation and my body has started to shrink, because you need weight on your body to protect you. So all of these things are like, tap into it. You know what I mean? But I could talk for hours on this because it's so flipping interesting. So anyway, this is me. This is my podcast, Tea with Marie. And I do hope you enjoyed it. And there will be more to come. And yeah, hanging out on a Sunday afternoon at my dining room table. And it's just really good to chat at length in a much more different vibe than the videos that I offer. So anyway, thank you for always showing up. Thank you for listening. And then tune into the next one, whenever that might be. At the moment, I'm going with Divine Inspiration. But yeah, this is Marie. Bye-bye.